Ohio was supposed to be the safe zone. When coastal markets overheated and big city prices went wild, people said the Midwest would hold steady. Affordable homes, stable jobs, nothing too crazy. But in 2026, that story is breaking in slow motion. Across Ohio, there are cities where price cuts are stacking up. For sale signs linger for months, and owners who thought they were safe are suddenly realizing the ground under their house is softer than they believed. Some are classic Rust Belt metros that never fully recovered, others are fast-growing suburbs that stretch too far, too fast. This is Discover the Nation. If you want real talk about where housing markets are quietly cracking before the headlines catch up, hit subscribe right now. Today, we are counting down 10 Ohio cities where the housing market is starting to collapse in 2026. Stay with us to the end because the #1 city on this list is still being marketed as a comeback story, even as the data and the street-level reality tell a very different tale. Let us start the countdown. Number 10. Springfield. Springfield sits between Dayton and Columbus, and for a while that felt like a strength. Buyers priced out of the bigger metros looked at Springfield and saw a bargain. Older homes, bigger yards, easier commutes if they were willing to drive. Investors saw cheap duplexes and single-family rentals and jumped in. The problem is that the math never really transformed. Wages in Springfield remained modest. A lot of jobs are in logistics, manufacturing, healthcare, and retail, sectors that do not suddenly start paying coastal salaries just because remote workers bought a few houses. When interest rates moved higher and inflation squeezed budgets, that gap between local income and jumped-up home prices became harder to ignore. In 2026, you see the strain in the listings. Houses sit, price reductions appear one after another. Sellers who thought they could push their luck with peak pricing are slowly walking numbers back, chasing a smaller pool of qualified buyers. Some owners who bought with adjustable mortgages or minimal savings are fighting rising payments while everything else in their life also costs more. Springfield also carries the burden of aging housing stock and infrastructure. Many properties need real work: old roofs, outdated electrical, inefficient windows. During the boom, buyers overlooked those issues just to get in. Now, inspection reports spook nervous buyers and deals fall apart. Investors who once talked about easy cash flow are quietly admitting that vacancies, repairs, and rising insurance have eaten away their margins. It is not a city that makes national headlines, but that is exactly why Springfield is important. It shows how a mid-sized market can look cheap on paper and still be too expensive for the people who actually live and work there. If you're tempted by low sticker prices, you need to look at what those homes really cost to own month after month. Number 9. Lorain. Lorain sits on the Lake Erie shoreline west of Cleveland, a city built around steel mills, shipyards, and blue-collar paychecks. For decades, the housing market moved at a rhythm with modest homes and modest prices. Then, the last few years brought a different story. As investors combed through Ohio for affordable markets, Lorain started showing up on their lists. They saw a waterfront city with low entry prices and assumed it would follow the Cleveland revival script. Out-of-town buyers snapped up single-family homes and duplexes, did quick renovations, and pushed up rents and asking prices. On paper, it looked like momentum. In reality, the local wage base changed little. Many residents still work in healthcare, logistics, service work, or factory jobs. When borrowing costs climbed and inflation hit food, gas, and utilities, the gap between paychecks and investor expectations became impossible to ignore. You see that tension in the listings. Upgraded homes in corridors sit longer than agents promised. Price reductions hit after a few weeks. Some properties go under contracted numbers, then come back when appraisals land low or buyers see that taxes, insurance, and repairs push the monthly cost past their comfort zone. The lakefront setting adds complications. Winter storms and flooding mean roof wear, foundation issues, and higher maintenance. Insurers are paying attention, and premiums for older homes have been creeping up. Tenants in drafty century houses struggle with high utility bills, and landlords who raised rents aggressively are discovering there is a hard ceiling on what local workers can pay. Lorain is not collapsing overnight, but it is a warning. You cannot just point to a lake, a low sticker price, and a renovation budget and declare guaranteed success. In 2026, the city shows what happens when investor enthusiasm outruns local reality. If you were tempted by cheap charts and glossy before and after photos, slow down and run the full numbers. Ask what happens to value, cash flow, and your stress level if vacancies rise, repairs stack up, or one major employer quietly starts cutting shifts for a year or longer. Number 8. Youngstown. Youngstown has been a symbol of industrial decline for decades, a place held up in documentaries and news segments about factory closures and population loss. In recent years, there was a quiet narrative that the worst was over. Prices had already bottomed, remote workers might return, and steady investment would slowly rebuild the city. That hopeful story ran into hard limits. In 2026, Youngstown's housing market is showing how difficult it is to rebuild on a shaky foundation. There were pockets of real improvement, some downtown loft conversions, some revitalized blocks, a handful of new businesses, but large sections of the city still struggle with vacant lots, abandoned houses, and low demand. When borrowing costs rose and outside interest cooled, the fragile progress started to wobble. Home prices here never soared to coastal levels, but even smaller jumps can be dangerous when incomes are low and unstable. Many residents live paycheck to paycheck. A higher mortgage payment, a small jump in insurance, or a surprise repair is enough to push a household over the edge. That is why foreclosure filings and tax delinquency notices are such important warning signs in a place like Youngstown. You can see the divide if you walk or drive through the city. One street has a newly renovated home with fresh paint and a real estate sign promising a new beginning. The next block has multiple boarded-up houses that drag down every appraisal. Buyers and lenders both know this, and they price in that risk, which keeps valuations weak even when individual homes are improved. For investors who hope to ride a comeback story, 2026 feels like a painful reality check. Rents are not rising fast enough to reward the risk, and resale markets are thin. If you buy in Youngstown today, you need to be honest with yourself. This is not a quick flip environment. It is a long, uncomfortable hold in a city where the population has been shrinking for years. Number 7. Marion. Marion sits north of Columbus, a small city with railroad routes, factories, and neighborhoods full of older, single-family homes. For a long time, the housing market moved quietly. Prices were low, turnover was slow, and most buyers were local families or small landlords. That changed when investors and remote workers started scouring maps for cheap Ohio houses. Suddenly, Marion showed up on their radar. Listings that might have sat for months were snapped up. Out-of-town buyers saw 3-bedroom homes under $150,000 and assumed there was nowhere to go but up. They did quick cosmetic renovations, raised rents, and told themselves they had found the next undervalued market. In 2026, the limits of that story are obvious. Marion's job base is still tied to manufacturing, logistics, healthcare, and service work. Wages are modest, and many households have little savings. When inflation pushed up groceries, gas, and utilities at the same time that interest rates jumped, the squeeze hit hard. You can see it in the housing data and on the ground. Freshly updated homes now linger on the market. Sellers who anchored expectations to peak comps are cutting prices once, twice, sometimes 3 times. Appraisals come in low, forcing renegotiations or killing deals. Buyers who do qualify are cautious, worried about taking on a big payment in a town where layoffs and reduced hours are familiar. The rental side is not immune. Higher rents collide with tenants who are already stretched. Missed payments, evictions, and move-outs eat into returns investors assumed would be smooth. Older homes reveal their true cost over time. Aging roofs, failing furnaces, drafty windows that drive winter heating bills higher. Marion is not a headline-grabbing collapse, but it is the kind of place where a quiet housing downturn does real damage.
Look only at low prices and it seems like a bargain. Look at job volatility, thin savings, and rising ownership costs, and you see why the 2026 market here feels fragile.
Number 6. Warren. Warren sits in the Mahoning Valley between Youngstown and Cleveland, a factory town still rebuilding after steel and auto jobs faded. For years, the housing market barely moved. Low prices, older homes, long-term owners, and a slow drip of population loss and deferred maintenance. Then the bargain hunters showed up. As prices in other parts of Ohio climbed, Warren started appearing in investor forums and remote worker videos. The pitch was simple: buy a whole house here for what a parking space costs on the coasts. Brick colonials, small ranches, duplexes under $150,000. On a spreadsheet, the cash flow looked unbeatable. Investors and out-of-town buyers scooped up inventory, some renovating properly, others doing quick cosmetic fixes or almost nothing before raising rents. Prices ticked up, vacancy dipped, and the story was that Warren was finally waking up. By 2026, the limits are obvious. The local wage base never caught up. Most households rely on modest pay from healthcare, logistics, small manufacturing, and service work. Inflation pushed up food, gas, and utilities, while employers trimmed shifts or froze hiring. There is not much room left for bigger mortgages or rent hikes. You see the fallout in the listings. Lightly renovated homes listed at top dollar are sitting. Price cuts show up every few weeks, deals collapse when financing fails, or inspections reveal issues the photos hid. The gap between what sellers want and what local buyers can support keeps widening. Warren's aging housing stock makes that gap worse. Old roofs, outdated wiring, damp basements, and tired furnaces all demand real money. On the rental side, stress is growing. Landlords quietly offer lower rents or move-in bonuses, while tenants, squeezed by higher living costs, struggle with late payments and move more often. Every vacancy and surprise repair eats away at those once perfect spreadsheets. Warren still has stable blocks and committed residents, but the margin for error is thin. In 2026, it is a warning. Low prices do not equal low risk, and any plan has to survive stalled rents, spiky repairs, in a nervous market.
Number 5. Dayton. Dayton sits at a major crossroads of highways and air routes, with a long history in aviation and manufacturing. In recent years, it leaned into logistics and defense-related work, and for a while the housing story sounded optimistic. Modest prices, reasonable commutes, and a sense that Dayton might quietly become one of the more stable cities in the state. But stability is fragile when most households have little buffer. As remote work and investor money spread across Ohio, Dayton became one more target for bargain hunters. Neighborhoods near downtown and near the big employers saw flippers and landlords arrive with cash and plans. Prices rose faster than wages, and longtime residents began to feel hemmed in. Some sold, some rented, some stayed and watched everything around them change. By 2026, the air has gone out of the hype. Properties that were renovated for top-dollar buyers are sitting longer. The assumed wave of higher-paid residents has not fully materialized, and some employers are cautious about expansions. In certain parts of the city, you see a patchwork of well-staged listings mixed with homes that never got the upgrades they need, both chasing the same limited demand. Dayton also faces infrastructure and quality-of-life questions that tie directly into housing. Schools and services vary widely by neighborhood. Crime concerns, while not as severe as in some larger cities, still play into buyer decisions, especially for families with young children. When a buyer can drive an extra 20 minutes and feel safer, that extra drive time often wins. For owners who bought late in the cycle, especially with thin cash reserves, the current environment is stressful. Repairs cannot be put off forever, but refinancing out of higher interest loans is not always easy. Landlords who assumed rent growth would bail them out are discovering that tenants have their own financial limits. Dayton is a place where careful, deeply researched purchases can still make sense, but treating it as a simple discount version of a bigger city is a mistake. The margin for error is shrinking, and that puts this city squarely on any honest list of Ohio markets under real pressure.
Number 4. Toledo. Toledo is a Great Lakes city with a proud industrial past and a complicated present. The port, the river, the glass history, the auto connections, all of it feeds into an economy that is never fully settled into a new, clear identity. The housing market reflects that uncertainty. For years, Toledo was one of the cheapest cities in Ohio to buy a house. That attracted investors looking for high percentage returns on small-dollar properties. It also attracted people relocating from more expensive areas who wanted to buy outright or own with very small mortgages. On the surface, it looked like a win-win. Underneath, the fundamentals were never as strong as the marketing made them sound. Job growth was uneven. Population trends were flat at best. Some neighborhoods improved, but others slipped. Older homes along certain corridors sat empty or under-maintained, even as nicer areas tried to pull in new buyers. In 2026, these tensions are becoming harder to ignore. The pool of local buyers who can afford higher prices remains limited. Out-of-town investors are more cautious after seeing friends lose money in other so-called cash flow markets. Sellers who want peak pricing are running into hard resistance. Longer days on market and aggressive negotiations are now normal. Toledo also sits on the front line of Great Lakes environmental issues. Algae blooms, water quality concerns, and extreme weather events have made people more aware of the hidden risks attached to certain locations. Flooding, basement backups, and drainage problems add to maintenance costs and scare off buyers who do not have the money or patience for constant repairs. For many properties, especially in weaker neighborhoods, the choice is stark. Invest serious money into bringing the house up to modern standards and hope someone will pay for it later, or accept a steep discount now and move on. Neither option feels great when household budgets and investor capital are already stretched. Toledo is a reminder that low prices alone do not make a housing market safe. In 2026, it's one of the Ohio cities where those low prices are starting to look less like opportunity and more like a warning label.
Number 3. Columbus. Columbus is the outlier on this list in one important way. It has been the growth engine of Ohio for years. A big university, a state capital, corporate headquarters, tech employers, and steady population gains made it the shining star in an otherwise slow-moving state. That success is exactly why its housing market is under so much pressure now. During the low-rate era, money rushed into Columbus. New apartments, suburban subdivisions, trendy infill projects, you name it, someone built it. Prices for single-family homes in popular neighborhoods shot up as buyers competed to get near certain schools, certain streets, certain commute corridors. The story was simple: Columbus is the future. Buy now or be locked out. By 2026, that narrative has hit a wall. The cost of a typical home in many parts of Columbus no longer lines up with what local buyers can comfortably afford. Even couples with two good salaries find that the total monthly cost of ownership, including property taxes, insurance, utilities, and student loans, leaves very little room for error. At the same time, the rental market has pockets of softness. New luxury units at the top of the market compete with each other using move-in specials and free months. Investors who bought second or third properties counting on endless rent growth are recalculating. Some are quietly listing those homes now, hoping to exit before prices slide further. Columbus also faces growing pains. Traffic, school crowding, uneven infrastructure, and tension over development are all part of life in a fast-growing city. Some neighborhoods feel like construction zones. Others feel left out, stuck with older housing and fewer services. That unevenness influences where demand flows, in which areas feel the earliest signs of a slowdown. For buyers, Columbus is no longer a guaranteed win. The question is not just, can you get in?
It is what happens if job growth slows or if higher-paying employers shift expansion to other states. When a market is priced for perfection, even small disappointments can cause real damage. In 2026, Columbus is closer to that edge than many people want to admit.
Number 2. Cincinnati. Cincinnati combines riverfront history, hillside neighborhoods, and a mix of old money and new investment. For a long time, it was seen as a cautious, steady metro, not as volatile as some Sun Belt boomtowns. That perception pulled in buyers and investors looking for solid, safe returns. The last few years tested that idea. As borrowing costs dropped, interest in Cincinnati surged. Neighborhoods close to downtown and popular job centers saw renovated homes sell for prices that would have seemed unrealistic a decade earlier. Breweries, restaurants, and entertainment districts fueled a story of urban revival. Suburbs across the river and around the Beltway also experienced rapid appreciation. In 2026, there are signs that the market has overshot. Some of the newly trendy areas now feel stretched. Small houses on narrow lots carry monthly payments that feel heavy compared to regional wages. Property taxes in certain jurisdictions have risen, reflecting past price increases, and that adds to the burden. For investors, higher interest rates have changed everything. Rental properties that penciled out when loans were cheap no longer look so great when financing costs double. Vacancies in certain segments are more common, particularly in older buildings that lack modern amenities. Landlords are being forced to decide whether to sink more money into upgrades or cut their losses. Cincinnati's geography also creates a patchwork of vulnerability. Hillside neighborhoods can face landslide or drainage issues. River adjacency brings both beauty and flood risk. Insurance pricing reflects those realities more and more. Buyers who fall in love with views sometimes get a rude awakening when they see actual coverage quotes. Cincinnati still has deep strengths, but those strengths do not protect every buyer from pain. In 2026, the people most at risk are those who stretched for the maximum they could qualify for, in locations that are more about buzz than long-term fundamentals. If you are considering a move to Cincinnati, this is the time to be more conservative, not less.
Number 1. Cleveland. Cleveland sits at the top of this list because it concentrates almost every risk we have talked about in one place. A legacy industrial city, a Great Lake at its doorstep, pockets of real revival, and large swaths of disinvestment. For years, the pitch was that Cleveland was the best value in the Midwest, with huge upside if you picked the right neighborhood. In 2026, that upside looks much more complicated. Some downtown and near West Side areas did see real improvements. Stadiums, entertainment districts, renovated lofts, and new restaurants created buzz. Prices climbed from very low bases to levels that felt almost shocking for longtime residents. Outside buyers saw charts moving up and jumped in, buying rentals, flips, and small portfolios. The problem is that the city as a whole still struggles with population loss, poverty, and uneven services. For every highly marketed block, there are many streets where vacant homes, empty lots, and aging infrastructure drag on value. When interest rates rose and investor enthusiasm cooled, the thin layer of demand supporting higher prices in some hotspots began to fade. Cleveland also faces direct climate and infrastructure challenges. Lake effect storms, flooding issues in certain low-lying neighborhoods, and concerns about aging water and sewer systems all increase maintenance costs. Roof damage, foundation problems, and moisture issues are common themes in inspection reports. Insurance premiums and deductibles are reacting to those realities. For homeowners who bought into the growth narrative at the top of the market, 2026 feels harsh. Some owe more on their mortgages than a realistic sale would bring. Others are discovering that finding a buyer willing to pay their asking price is much harder than it looked when headlines were all about revitalization. Cleveland still has loyal residents and real potential, but potential does not erase risk. Right now, it is the clearest example in Ohio of a market where the gap between hopeful marketing and street-level reality has grown dangerously wide.
That is why it lands at number 1 on this list of Ohio cities where the housing market is collapsing in 2026.
So what does this tour through Ohio really tell us? Prices pushed ahead of local incomes, investors chased the same strategies. Older homes and aging infrastructure were ignored during the rush, then turned into expensive problems when the bills came due. If you are thinking about buying in any of these cities, you cannot just look at the sticker price. You have to look at total cost of ownership, at job stability, at insurance, utilities, taxes, and the strength of the local economy. You have to ask whether the people who actually keep the city running can still afford to live there. If this breakdown from Discover the Nation helped you see Ohio's housing story more clearly, do 2 quick things. First, subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss our next deep dive into the markets that are quietly shifting under the surface. Second, tell us in the comments where you are watching from and what you are seeing on the ground. Are prices holding, slipping, or already cracking? Because the 2026 housing reset is not just a coastal issue, it's moving through the heartland right now. And the more you understand what's really happening, the better prepared you are to protect your future.